Hey Daniel, what are you reading?
Oh, it's the DC All-In Special. It's the new launch initiative for DC Comics.
Wait, what happened to Dawn of DC? That really doesn't feel like all that long ago.
Yeah, I know.
And what about Superman Superstars? You got, what, 2 writers that got to give it a go?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I guess 3 issues wasn't really a lot for a writer, but it just feels like this is gonna slide into another event, and we just finished Absolute Power.
I know. It's just modern comics business. I'm trying to be positive, alright?
Sorry, is it at least any good?
Well, hey guys, Starfish Sicko aka Daniel here, and today we are going to be reviewing the DC All-In Special Number 1, the upteenth launch initiative for DC Comics and the birth of the Absolute Universe. Is it a good place to jump in, or is DC just trying to fix what isn't broken once again?
Or maybe DC just wanted a boost in their sales.
Quiet, you. Let's discuss it together. First though, if you like my content, please consider subscribing and maybe checking out some of my previous videos. I do try to respond to every comment because I love these books, I love these characters, and more than anything, I love discussing it with other people. So let's get started. Every once in a while, DC Comics likes to do a new launch initiative, usually to strum up new readers and invigorate old ones. In fact, I believe one of my previous videos was covering the Dawn of DC, which was one of their old launch initiatives. And so DC's decided to do another one. Again, sometimes these go over well. See DC Rebirth and what they did for Wally West. Other times they're quickly forgotten. See DCU and Jim Gordon Batman. And sometimes it's just to mark the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. And DC Comics is entering this new era with the special DC All-In number 1. They usually put these specials out to help entice us readers. This time around, it's not just new costumes and the hints of a new status quo, though there are, but we are getting a brand new universe, the Absolute Universe, being spearheaded by the new Absolute Trinity. Now, I plan to cover Absolute Superman in full, scaling him as we review the books together. However, I thought it important to cover this special because it sets the stage for all of this. I picked myself up the foil variant because I'm a 90s kid and they conditioned us to like shiny objects. But the standard cover is absolute fire, and it really lets you know what the book is about, such as setting up the whole new universe. The center spread is drawn by Dan Moore, an absolute Superman powerhouse, and I just gotta say, I love the way this guy draws my boy. If you ever get the chance, you should interact with this man on Twitter. He is absolutely fantastic. Now, this book is actually split into 2 sides, the Alpha and the Omega. I didn't know that going in, and it was sort of novel to me. We will cover the Alpha side first. Both sides are written by Joshua Williamson and Scott Snyder, with Williamson getting top billing for Alpha and Scott Snyder for Omega. Let's start with Williamson. I did a whole video covering the start of his Superman book, so if you watched that, you have a pretty good idea of how I like his writing, and he does a solid job here. He manages to get across the hope and optimism of DC that I love so much, but not just in Big Blue. More on that soon. The art side of Alpha, and please forgive me for mispronouncing your name, we have Daniel St. Pierre, who has worked on Justice League and Action Comics. And boy, you know what? I also love the way this guy draws Superman. As usual, let's not forget the others that help bring the collaborative project that is comics together. Again, apologies for mispronouncing all of your names. On colors, we have Alejandro Sanchez. On the colors for the center spread, we have Tamara Bovian. And on letters, we have Steve Wands. And as per usual, spoilers for both the Alpha and the Omega sides, but we are starting with the Alpha side. Story centers around, strangely enough, Booster Gold, having just been invited to join the new Justice League Unlimited, because DC just keeps chasing that dragon. The scene where Superman invites Booster I found to be a little bit touching, honestly. Clark even says how he sees the best in Booster and just thinks he gets in his own way. Superman does stuff like that a lot, and I just like to see it. And I mean, just look at Superman's smile in these scenes, it's great. More than that, I really love it when somebody rises to the occasion and proves Superman right, and Booster Gold really does here. Of course, the celebrations are short-lived, as Darkseid, who has mysteriously fused with the Spectre, appears. He is screaming and telling somebody to stop resisting and reveal the truth that has been hidden from him. And just as that truth is revealed, he disappears in a hole that's ripped open in space and time. Booster notes that whatever happened changed the future, as the symbolic blank card he remembers from the future has been altered. Being the only member that is infused with large amounts of tachyons, Booster volunteers to follow Darkseid. What does he find? That I don't wish to spoil just yet. And with that, Alpha ends. And if you want to read Omega, you have to flip the book over and start reading from the other side. Just like the other side of a coin. I honestly do find that sort of neat. I sure do love a good gimmick when it comes to my comics, a 90s kid. On the Omega side, as I said, we have Scott Snyder taking the reins, known for his works on Dark Knight's Death Metal and the Court of Owls. And I think it shows a little bit. Our artist for this side is Wes Craig, who I'm honestly not all that familiar with. Their art sort of reminds me of this, stylized wall mosaic, so it definitely stands out against some of his competitors, and it makes it memorable. It just doesn't really work for me. Not that it's bad, except maybe for this one shot right here. And you know what? It might even work better for you, and if it does, you know what? Rock on. Let's not forget our colorist here, Mike Spicer, and I really think that his work complements this style. In the Omega story, we follow Darkseid, who is feeling a strange surge of power that is causing him internal confusion. We get to see this man carve a path through the multiverse, from heaven to the dark side of the moon, in search for answers. And where does he find those answers? Through the forced fusion of Spectre. That's where our stories begin to converge. Only from Darkseid's perspective, he isn't just battling the Justice League, but the Spectre as well, until finally all is revealed to him. And what is that truth exactly? Well, it turns out that this truth is pretty great for the power scaling bros out there, because it once more confirms that Darkseid is an archetypal force in the Omniverse. He is final, he is primal. The ultimate representation of destruction and death. And the opposing force to this is hope, which shines through in Superman. Two archetypal figures, two sides of the same coin. It sure would be neat if somebody was working on a video about this. Stay tuned. Stepping aside from all that nonsense for a minute, we see what Darkseid does with that truth. And we get our first glimpse at the Absolute Trinity, especially my boy Absolute Superman. I already love this guy. And this being their first cameos, some collectors may want to snag this book as a starting point. Brings us to our ending, which I will now spoil. You have been warned. both stories converge with the same ending page of a glorious 2-page spread showing Darkseid and his new Legion. Peak. This brings us to my first impressions of DC's All-In initiative, and overall they're pretty positive. You have high stakes, pretty good art, a little bit of mystery, and an excellent stinger in the first issue. And I would be remiss if I didn't once more mention the tease for the Absolute Universe, whose books are already dropping by the time this video does. However, I do feel like I need to offer a couple of critiques here and there. For instance, it's hard for me to call this a great jumping on point. Maybe you could call it a good one. Most past issues have been resolved and a new thread is being established. But as I've sort of been hinting at throughout the entirety of this video, it feels like a lot of stories and ideas are being abruptly dropped from the dawn of DC. And then you have the Omega half of the story. It feels like it only read as well as it did to me because I have a very extensive knowledge of Darkseid and his history. And if you don't, a lot of this is probably going to come off as confusing, especially for a new reader. You have Justice League Unlimited. Look, I love the show Justice League Unlimited. A lot. But it feels this is what DC books always default back to when sales start to dip. It also feels a little like it's being influenced by James Gunn's incoming filmverse, and I really don't like when the comics and films influence each other. That's just sort of a preference thing. And this one sort of feels like a really weird complaint, as this is a launching point, but it feels a little advertisement heavy. Like, I know that that's its job, to get us interested in the new league and the Absolute Universe and quote-unquote new status quos. And as excited as I am for all of that, some of that stuff just takes me out of the story a little bit, especially when I'm thinking about, well, how long is any of this going to last? And really the worst part for me is it feels like DC's already geared up to set up for a new event when we've had just so many back to back. If it were up to me, DC would be taking a 2-year break minimum from launchers and events. Bitching and moaning aside, I did enjoy this book. And if it gets somebody interested in DC Comics and picking up regular issues at their local comic book store, then the book certainly did its job. I'm also really excited to dive headfirst into the Absolute Universe just to see something different, especially Absolute Superman, because come on. And I really am excited to do a book-by-book review for this new version of Superman, and I can't wait to discuss that with everyone here. But those are just my impressions. Have you gotten to check this book out yet? Have you gotten to read Absolute Batman yet? Or are you waiting around for edgy soups? Comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed your time here, once more, please consider liking and subscribing. It goes a long way for me. Anyway, that's been Daniel with Truth, Justice, and all of that nonsense. I'll catch you next time.